Okay, thanks, Linda. Welcome, everybody, to our data training webinar on the Early Head Start Family and Child Experiences Survey 2009, also known as Baby Faces. The webinar today will introduce you to the Baby Faces files archived through Research Connections. We'll also discuss the study design, technical issues that you may encounter with the files, and we'll offer tips for working with the data. There will also be, of course, ample time at the end of the training to take your questions. My name is Joanna Bleckman. I manage the archive of data sets for the Research Connections project and for all of the education-related projects here at ICPSR. In a few minutes, I will turn the presentation over to Sherry Vogel and Judy Cannon at Mathematica Policy Research. But before I do that, I will quickly take this opportunity to first introduce you to Research Connections, our project and our website, in case you're unfamiliar. I'll demonstrate how to find the Baby Faces study on our website, and I'll point you toward the application portal, given that the Baby Faces data are restricted from general dissemination. Applications are required for access. So Research Connections is a partnership operated by the National Center for Children in Poverty at the Mailman School of Public Health, Columbia University, and the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research at the Institute for Social Research, University of Michigan. We are supported by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation within the Administration for Children and Families in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Research Connections promotes high-quality research in early care and education, and then the use of that research in policy making. Through our website, we offer research and data resources for researchers, policymakers, practitioners, and others. We aim to improve the quality of research. We do this by offering things like research tools, data sets, research syntheses from multiple disciplines, all in one central location. We currently offer nearly 28,000 resources, most of which are downloadable directly from our website, which I'll show you in a moment. Among those almost 28,000 are over 300 data sets, and they are either directly downloadable via the website or accessible like Baby Faces through a restricted data use agreement. These files are all analysis ready. They're available in several different software packages, SPSS, SAS, Data, R, the primary packages. And they're fully documented for ease of use. Research Connections also aims to inform and improve early care and education policy. So we're trying to bridge the gap between researchers and policymakers by making the most up-to-date findings both easily findable on the website and easily understood by folks outside of the research community who may not speak the same sort of technical language as academic researchers. So I'm going to jump over to the Research Connections website right now, and I'll give you a quick tour of our features. So on the home page here, we have a few sort of like quick access points to the resources that we offer, and I'll go through a couple of them. So down here in the lower left, we have new research. This is updated regularly, usually weekly, with new reports, fact sheets, papers, etc. These are going to be very new items that we want to pull out of the collection and highlight for you. We have an announcement section up in the upper right-hand corner. This is to keep folks informed about data training opportunities like this one, new data sets that we've released, job openings in the field, grant opportunities, and other recent news. I'll also point you toward our rotating carousel here. You can see it's moving through all of these different options. At any given time, this might feature collections of resources and news on like work group activities, really active or timely topics in the field. Like for instance, right now we're featuring resources related to preventing preschool expulsion. That's the one that's up on your screen right now. We also have resources related to full-day kindergarten, etc. We'll also pull out resources related to a particular project or a data set. For instance, the National Survey of Early Care and Education. I think that's the next one, right? We're featuring that right now. So we have I'll just quickly show you so just a compilation of all of the resources that we have and any announcements that we have on that project or on that data set. So while I said that the home page offers sort of quick access to the most current news and information, our search tool is really what I think of as the main point of entry into our really expansive database of ECE resources. So I'm going to demo a search for the baby faces data here. So you can either enter baby faces, which is the short name, or early Head Start research, early Head Start Family and Child Experiences Survey. Either one of those will come up with the right hits. So when I search for baby faces, I come up with a significant number of results in the resources tab. And so this is going to be research syntheses, instruments, papers, reports, etc., all related to the search terms that you entered. And then if you click over to the data tab, this will be data sets that are related to the search terms that you entered. And of course, baby faces is the first hit that comes up here. I'll show you that on the resources tab you have a selection of filters so that you can narrow your search by certain facets of the resources that we have here. You can filter by resource type, by author if you know the author you're looking for, publication date, state, etc. And then you have a similar list of filters on the data tab, so subject, geography, data format, etc. So various options for narrowing in on what you're looking for. But this search turned up exactly what I was looking for here, first spot. So I'll show you here the study homepage, as we call it. This is the sort of hub of information for Early Head Start Family and Child Experiences Survey. We've got a quick summary of the project here. The access notes will always indicate whether or not the data files can be downloaded directly from the website or if an application is necessary. These files, again, are restricted, and so you'll need to click here to apply for access to the data. What we request is that you send us IRB review or documentation that your IRB has reviewed your project. And then we ask for a signed data use agreement and some general information about your project and about the PI and the research staff. So that can be accessed through this link here. If you scroll down, all of our studies will have all of the data sets within listed here. You can download the Baby Faces user guide right from this page and all of the associated code books, which are produced per file. None of the data files are downloadable, of course. For many other studies, there would be data sets linked here in various formats. So further down the page, I've got the citation for this study. We've got the scope, methodology, all kinds of good information that is at the study level. We also have a variable search tool, which is like at this moment being added to the Baby Faces study homepage. So I can't show it to you right now, but you'll be able to, within the next few hours, actually, you'll be able to search through all of the Baby Faces variables and compare variables also. I think that was all I wanted to show you on the Research Connections site. So I encourage you to visit our website regularly to keep up to date on the happenings with Baby Faces and all the other Research Connections news and data sets. But I also recommend that you sign up for our news and resources emails. They come out about every 2 weeks. We announce new data releases, funding or job opportunities, data training events, similar to what's in the announcements section on our website. But this way it will come directly to your inbox. We're also on social media. You can find real-time updates from us on Facebook and Twitter. Links to social media and to that news and resources listserv can be found in the upper right-hand corner of all of the pages of our website that's pictured here. So that's it for me. I will turn you over now to Sherry Vogel and Judy Cannon at Mathematica Policy Research. So let me switch presenters here. I'm switching it to Sherry. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Judy? Okay, cool.
Oh, okay, we have to push that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Linda, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Vogel, and I'm a senior researcher at Mathematica Policy Research in the Princeton, New Jersey office. And I was the project director for Baby Faces 2009. I'm really pleased to be here today to tell you about the data that are now available to you. And I want to introduce my colleague and co-presenter, Judy Cannon. Judy is a senior programmer at Mathematica, and she was the lead programmer analyst for Baby Faces, so she's a wonderful resource. I'd also like to acknowledge Amy Madigan, who was our federal project officer from the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation at the Administration for Children and Families. So the objectives that we have today are pretty wide-ranging. We want to introduce you to the Baby Faces study and data, provide information on technical issues around working with the data, answer your questions about the data files, and our ultimate goal is that you become a user of the Baby Faces data and hopefully other data that are available through Research Connections. You saw the link to the user's guide, and I'm going to refer to that frequently because it is really going to be your Bible for these data sets. I will also warn you that before you print it, it's an extremely long document. There are a lot of appendices that include all of the instruments. So just know it's over more than 1,000 pages. But if you print the first 42, that is where we have all the explanatory text, and that's what's really going to be useful for orienting you to the data initially. I'm going to start with a brief overview of some key aspects of the study, and then we'll move into some more detail about the data files. So I'm going to try to cover a lot in this session, as you can see, remembering that all this information is drawn from the user's guide. So I'm going to take on the first part of this discussion that's going to cover the topics in the first 4 bullets on this list. And at that point, I'll pause and answer questions that have come in. And if the questions concern things that I know we're going to be covering, I may just skip them for the time being, and then we can come back to them. So Judy is going to talk more in detail about things like the data file structure, sampling weights, and more technical things like that. And then we'll provide some time at the end for additional questions. Baby Faces was designed as a large-scale descriptive study to provide national-level information on early Head Start programs, staff, services, and families. It includes detailed data on program experiences, including the amount and quality of services, and on child outcomes, with detailed information when children are 2 and 3 years old. Baby Faces is not designed to answer questions about whether early Head Start works. There is no control or comparison group to show what would have happened in the absence of the program. However, there are many interesting questions that can be explored with these data. Baby Faces provides national estimates on early Head Start programs and provides information on children who were enrolled in those programs in 2009 throughout their experience in early Head Start. We sampled programs, oversampling larger ones, and recruited all children in each program who fell within our 2 birthday windows. This means that children's experience in the program varied. Some 1-year-olds may have been enrolled since before their birth, while others could have been recently enrolled. In other words, although 2009 was the first wave of data collection, it does not represent a true baseline of children and families at early Head Start entry. So you can think of children in Baby Faces as representing children of these particular ages who were enrolled in spring 2009 and who continued to be enrolled at each data collection point thereafter. We did not follow those who left the program, only those who continued to be enrolled. Here are some examples of the kinds of descriptive questions that you can and cannot explore with Baby Faces 2009 data. Baby Faces is designed to provide rich descriptive information about the children who attend early Head Start, their families, and their programs. It includes information about the demographic characteristics of the early Head Start population and their families, children's development, characteristics of programs, the amount of services these programs deliver to children and their families, and the amount and quality of services families receive. Baby Faces 2009 is also a longitudinal study and can be used to describe changes in children's development, parent outcomes, and program services over their enrollment in early Head Start. Comparisons can be made within cohort, or to increase sample size and power, cohorts can be aggregated, and analyses of all 1-year-olds or 2-year-olds or so on can be done. It is important to note that the study design limits some of the questions that can be explored. We did not include children who were older than 1, so the study cannot answer questions about those who enrolled later. Because we did not follow program exiters, we only have outcomes at each time point for those who remain enrolled in the program. And we did not sample teachers or home visitors, so we cannot draw conclusions about the population of those staff. And finally, the study sample did not include American Indian Alaska Native or migrant seasonal Head Start programs. Here's some additional analytic questions that baby faces can and cannot answer. Baby faces can be used to study differences in child and family characteristics and how these are related to a range of child and parent or family outcomes. It's also possible to examine relationships between aspects of program services to outcomes, such as the amount of services, or to explore relationships between service quality and outcomes, and many other questions. Now, as I mentioned before, baby faces does not provide the ability to determine the cause of any given outcome, only the strength of the relationships between predictors and outcomes. The 89 early Head Start programs in baby faces are representative of the population of programs nationally as of 2009. Within programs, the families and children being served represent the population of parents and of newborn and 1-year-olds enrolled in early Head Start in spring 2009. We used a clustered, stratified sample design. And as I mentioned earlier, within the 89 programs, we selected all children whose date of birth or due date fell within the study-defined windows. This resulted in 976 children who entered the study at the initial wave in 2009. We followed these children over time until they became ineligible for the study, which essentially means they left the program. We did not sample teachers or home visitors, so staff and quality information is always at the child level. In the reports, we address this by saying things like, this percentage of children had teachers with that level of education. Here's some more specifics about the sample sizes at different data collection waves. In spring 2009, we selected 1,217 children into the baby faces sample. From this sample, 109 children were ineligible, either because they were not actually currently enrolled or because their birth date fell outside of our study-defined windows. And 132 eligible children's parents did not consent to participate in the study. And there were 3 additional who gave consent but rescinded that consent later on. So again, this left us with just under 1,000 children in both cohorts in the first wave of data collection in spring 2009. You will notice that the sample gets smaller over time. Response rates were high across waves, so this attenuation is primarily because children leave the program over time. And we conducted brief exit interviews with families who had disenrolled from early Head Start beginning in fall 2009 and then each spring thereafter. Exit interviews indicated that moving was the primary reason given for leaving the program before age 3. Overall, about a third of the sample of children became ineligible for the study by leaving the program before age 3. As this slide shows, baby faces collected data annually. There were 4 rounds of data collection on the newborn cohort and 3 rounds on the 1-year-old cohort. Note that the reference materials in some of the later slides refer to these as cohort 0 and cohort 1. The only differences in data collection schedules were when children were 0 and 1-year-old. We did not observe classrooms or home visits for the newborn group in the first round of data collection. And we conducted the first child assessments, direct child assessments at age 2 and again at age 3. Otherwise, we collected parent interviews, staff child reports, teacher and home visitor interviews, which were of the teacher or home visitor assigned to a given baby faces family, observations of each classroom for children at 1, 2, or 3 years old, as well as home visit observations at those same ages. We treated home visitors like a classroom teacher in that we observed 1 visit for each visitor assigned to a baby faces family and applied that score to any other baby faces families who had the same home visitor. And this was primarily done for logistical reasons. Child assessments at ages 2 and 3 also included 2 video recorded assessments, the Early Communication Indicators, or ECI, and the two bags task. And I'll say a little bit more about both of these in a moment. And finally, we also collected weekly reports on the services offered to and received by families and conducted interviews with program directors. We will now turn to a description of the data collection instruments used in Babyfaces 2009 and briefly provide an overview of the contents of each. The user's guide that accompanies the public use file contains an appendix that includes the non-copyrighted Babyfaces instruments. It also includes a content matrix which provides more detailed information on the contents of each instrument. As I noted earlier, we collected information from multiple reporters. This slide shows the primary developmental domains for which we collected data and the sources of those data. Children's outcomes were collected through reports by parents and staff, meaning teachers and home visitors, as well as directly measured with the child, his or herself. The Babyfaces parent interviews capture information on numerous background characteristics of the study child and the study child's parent, including age, race, ethnicity, country of origin, years in the United States, education and employment, and so on. We also included a number of other measures about the child within the parent interviews, including measures of social emotional development using the Brief Infant Toddler Social Emotional Assessment, or the BITSE, of general development using the Ages and Stages questionnaires, language with the Communicative Development Inventories, or CDI, and children's health. This is also about the parent interview, and many of the measures on this slide concern parent well-being and attributes of the home environment. I won't list each by name, but we provide a lot of information about the measures in both the data documentation and in the technical appendices of each of the reports. Direct assessments of children were done in the children's homes at ages 2 and 3. The key measures were of language development using the PLS-4 and the PPBT-4. The examiner also completed a rating of the child's behavior and conducted a video component in which children played with an adult. For the ECI, the child played with the examiner, and for the two bags, the parent was the play partner. The videos were later coded at Mathematica to score the ECI. The two bags was coded with two different coding schemes: the parenting interactions with children checklist of observations linked to outcomes, or Piccolo, and the parent-child interactions coding schemes. For the child assessment, an assessor contacted the parent to schedule a time for the visit in which the child would be awake. The assessors began with the PLS-4, then moved on to height and weight, and the PPBT, which was only administered at age 3. And then finally the video tasks. Although parent interviews were conducted primarily by telephone, during the home visit, the parent completed the child-focused instruments in a brief self-administered questionnaire while the examiner was working with the child. The visits usually took about an hour. This is how the language of assessments was determined. Unlike studies of older children that use language screeners, we relied on parent reports. If the parents reported that the child was exposed to Spanish in the home, then a Spanish bilingual assessment was conducted. We confirmed the language by asking questions of the parent when making the appointment for the home visit. Spanish-speaking children completed the PLS-4 in Spanish to a ceiling, which is a consecutive number of items answered incorrectly. Items that were missed in Spanish were attempted in English to an English ceiling. Children received a Spanish standard score and a conceptual score that took into account knowledge of both languages. Children who completed the English PLS-4 received a standard English score. And all children were given the PPBT-4 in English at age 3, regardless of their language status. Staff child reports were given to the teacher or home visitor assigned to the study family at that data collection wave. The entire instrument focused on the child and the family from the staff member's perspective. Staff reported on children's social emotional development using the BITSE and Behavior Problems Index, or BPI, and their language with the CDI. If both the child and the staff member spoke Spanish, the staff member also completed a Spanish CDI. They also rated family engagement in the program and reported on their relationship with the parent. Those same staff members were also asked to complete an interview that gathered information about them, their age, experience, race, educational attainment, levels of depressive symptoms, and so on. Again, because teachers and home visitors were not sampled, these variables are attached to the child-level files. We conducted live-coded classroom quality assessments when children were 1, 2, and 3 years old with observers who were trained and certified. When children were 1, we used the Infant-Toddler Environment Rating Scale revised, the ITERS-R. And when children were 2 and 3, we used what was then a new measure, the toddler version of the class. Home visits were observed and coded at each age using the Home Visitor Rating Scale adapted. Program director interviews were collected annually for 3 years. Each year we asked about program approaches and services offered, staff experience, education and training, and other areas with some variation in topics by year. The Family Services Tracking System was developed specifically for baby faces. Staff completed a weekly report that described all of the listed aspects of services for the entire time that children were enrolled in the program. The system was really useful because it provided information about services offered by programs and received by families over time, and reasons that services were not received. It also provided information on staff and service changes, such as the primary staff member assigned to the family, or in program service option, such as moving from home visiting to center-based care, and the timing of program exits if they occurred. This is new for Early Head Start and the first time that there's detailed information about families' participation in the program during their enrollment. So let's pause here, see if there are questions that I can address now, and again, if there are ones that are going to be answered in the next section, I will do that. Okay, so there's a question about clarifying the 2 different cohorts. So yes, in 2009, the newborn cohort was either approximately like a 6 months or 7 months gestation, due and due, or they were up to 8 weeks of age. And then the other group was between 10 and 15 months of age. And then we just followed those groups. So if you ever want to look at all the 1-year-olds, you need to combine 2010 and 2009 data together to get all the 1-year-olds. And the parent modernity scale was, I believe, not collected from providers. That was a question about whether it was collected from both parents and providers, and I believe it was only collected from parents. Okay, well, why don't we turn things over to Judy now, and she's going to cover more detail about the files. Just give us 1 second while we find our ability to see our slides.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Judy Cannon, and as Sherry mentioned earlier, I'm a senior programmer with Mathematica and was the lead programmer analyst for Baby Faces. I'm going to begin by talking about accessing the Baby Faces data. Throughout the presentation, I will try to pause after slides that convey large amounts of information to give you a chance to digest what you have heard and read. So please do not be alarmed if you do not hear audio for a few seconds between some slides. I will provide an overview of the data that will be available for Baby Faces. You will learn about the different data files, the structure and conventions of those files, and the constructed or derived variables and assessment scores available that go beyond the survey data. I will describe documentation that serve as a resource to acquaint you with the data that accompany the public use data files. The 12 baby faces data files are organized and saved as 4 different types of files. First, the child-level constructed or derived variables and scores. Second, the child-level source data. Third, the child-level exit interview source data. And fourth, the program-level data, which includes the program director interview source data and constructed variables. The child-level constructed variables file and exit interview source data files are split only by cohort, whereas the child-level source data files are split by both cohort and year of data collection. The program-level file contains all source data and constructed variables from all 3 years of program director interview data. When we discuss constructed or derived variables, we are including anything that was created from the raw data, including assessment scores. The structure of each of the baby faces files is similar and generally begins with a set of identifier variables, which will be discussed in the next section, followed by basic demographic information, including cohort, age, gender, and race, a set of flags indicating whether or not there is a completed instrument for the case from each data source, for example, whether or not a child has completed a parent interview in fall 2009, weight variables, constructed or derived variables, and data from appropriate interview or questionnaires. Chapter 6 in the User's Guide provides an overview of the source instruments of each file and the file name, along with details on the structure of the exact data on the file. The record level for the program file is program, containing the program director interview source data and constructed variables. The child-level source data files include a data record for each eligible consented child for each year of data collection, regardless of whether there is child data from the various instruments. It is important to note that for copyrighted instruments, such as the child assessment and observation tools, item-level data is not in the source data files. The appropriate scores are found within the constructed variable files. Chapter 6 of the User's Guide also reviews several data file conventions, including variable naming. For baby faces, the first character represents the source instrument. Prefixes for each instrument are found in the User's Guide. The second character in the prefix represents the age in which the information was collected. You can then quickly identify the source and data collection age in both the variable name and the variable label. The rest of the variable name then is based on the questionnaire or interview item number, or a shortened description of the construct in the case of the constructs. For example, the variable P1M_EMPLY is mother employed. So this eases in going back to the questionnaire to understand how the question was asked and what the data represents. In general, all constructs derived from a given source maintain the same prefix as the source. Some construct variables, however, combine information across data collection points and/or several sources, and are not associated with any prefixes, such as M_risk. M_risk is the baseline maternal risk variable and is set equal to the first point at which maternal risk is available. A few exceptions that do not follow these conventions include identifiers, such as child ID, or weights, such as the weight W1P. We included all constructed and derived variables that were used to produce any tables, figures, or other numbers in any of the baby faces reports. Many of these use data from multiple items or require considerable effort to construct, but some are also simple recodes of raw variables. Assessment scores were created for the child assessment cognitive and social measures, as well as for height, weight, and body mass index. Child assessment scores in baby faces include raw, standardized, or IRT-based scores. Raw scores refer to counts, averages, or the like of the individual items that the child completed. They are indicators of absolute rather than relative performance. In contrast, standardized scores allow for comparisons of an individual's performance relative to others of the same age. Standard scores have a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. Scores above or below the mean indicate that baby faces children are above or below the mean compared to same age peers. IRT scores are those best suited for measurement of change or growth in absolute performance on the same scale over time. IRT scores estimate a child's score as if he or she had taken all items in an assessment. as a child may not receive all items based on basal or ceiling rules, for example. Constructed or derived variables fall into 5 categories. Child and family characteristics include constructs such as child gender, family income, family structure, and risk indices. Family processes and parenting cover family home activities, household routines, parent oppression, child care, and child and family health. Variables concerning teacher or home visitor characteristics come from one of 2 sources: the teacher and home visitor interviews and the classroom and home visit observations. It includes class ratios, observation scores, teacher or home visitor depression, and other teacher or home visitor characteristics. Family services tracking variables include constructs created from the family services tracking data. This includes, but is not limited to, center days attended, home visits completed, the number of family services tracking reports completed, and whether or not a child's care type or provider has changed. Finally, the program characteristics include information on program approach, staff turnover, center schedules, number of children enrolled, and implementation scores. The Baby Faces User's Guide is a key resource for information about the study design, data collection procedures, response rates, data review and editing and preparation for the file, data file structure and use, and details on the constructs created from the data. The User's Guide also includes 12 appendices that provide detail on the data included on the 12 files. Appendices A through G include the Baby Faces instruments annotated with the source variable names for any non-copyrighted materials. Again, copyrighted instruments or scales are not included on the data file. The User's Guide details the original measures in text and provides copyright statements required by publishers. Appendix H includes 3 codebooks for constructed variable files. The first codebook contains the variable names and the year and age for which it exists. The second has the same information, plus detailed specifications on how the variable was created for all non-copyrighted constructed or derived variables. And the third contains basic descriptive statistics for each variable in the child-level constructed variables file, split by cohort. Appendix I contains the codebook for child-level source data, Appendix J, the codebook for program-level data, and Appendix K, the codebook for exit interview source data. Finally, Appendix L lists all the variables that have been removed or masked from any of the files containing source data due to rare events. Here is an example of the codebook that is provided for each file, both program and child level. The codebooks are organized to reflect the file structure as outlined earlier. Here is an example of the table in Appendix H that displays the specifications for each constructed variable. The organization is by data source and domain, with the program-level constructs following the child-level constructs. Here is an example of the table in Appendix L that details all source variables that have been dropped or collapsed due to rare events. We created this table so that you are able to reconcile the differences between the instruments that are annotated with the variable names and the variables found in the data files. Dropped refers to variables that have been removed from the data file due to a rare event. NA means non-applicable and refers to variables that do not exist in that year and cohort of data. And collapsed refers to variables that have been grouped into larger categories, capped, or combined with one or more variables forming an other variable. The collapsed variable name column shows the name of the variable after being collapsed. This will be the same name as the original variable unless the original variable was combined with one or more variables to create a new other variable. Next, we will share some tips for working with the Baby Faces data. Baby Faces is a complex study, and the data sets reflect this complexity. You will need to make a number of decisions when using the data. In the time we have today, we would like to share with you some information that will hopefully make your decision-making and the task of working with the data a bit easier. We've identified 3 issues that are listed here: sampling weights and variance estimation, missing data, and merging data files and working with merged data. First, we will talk about sampling weights and variance estimation. There are several features of baby faces in all large-scale national studies that are important to keep in mind when you are thinking about the need to use weighted or unweighted data in your analysis. They are listed here. Baby faces is designed to produce national estimates. It is a sample. In other words, the entire population was not surveyed. It is not a simple random sample. Not all programs, parents, and children had an equal probability of selection. Not all programs, parents, and children participated. Since baby faces is designed to produce national estimates, it is important to use weights in order to adjust for probabilities of selection, adjust for non-response, identify eligible cases, and reduce potential bias. Baby faces weights vary according to level of analysis, round of data, and source of data. Chapter 2 of the Baby Faces User's Guide describes the process used to create the weights and provides 3 tables designed to help you choose the correct weight. The first table lists the cross-sectional weights, the second longitudinal weights, and the third other weights, such as weights for the exit interview data and for the family services tracking data. There are 38 weights on the Baby Faces data files. When choosing a weight, you should consider your level of analysis, sources of data, and whether you need to work with more than one round of data. This list of weights is a small sample from the codebook for the Cohort 1 constructed variables file. Generally speaking, the second character in each weight corresponds to age, and the third character corresponds to the data source. So, for example, if you would like to find out the percentage of mothers that are employed for children at age 1, you would take the mean of P1M_employ, which, as a reminder, is an age 1 variable from the parent interview, using the weight W1P. Similarly, if you would like to find the mean of mothers that are employed for children at age 2, you would take the mean of P2M_employ, using the weight W2P. As you can see from this example, the second character of the cross-sectional weights, which is 1 for W1P and 2 for W2P, corresponds to age, and the third character, which is P for both of these weights, indicates that the weight is used for parent interview data. If you'd like to rerun this analysis only looking at one cohort, for example the 1-year-old cohort, you would still use the same weights and simply subset for cases where cohort equals 1. These weights were derived separately by cohort, so it is okay to use them for both cohorts combined or one at a time. On the other hand, if you would like to rerun this analysis looking at the change of the mother's employment status over ages 1, 2, and 3, you would use the weight WL_P_any. For this weight, the second character L stands for longitudinal, and the last 4 characters P_any stand for any parent interview. Once again, this information is detailed in Chapter 2 of the User's Guide. You can use Baby Faces data to test the differences between 2 or more groups of children, or the relationships between the characteristics or environments of children. You can conduct tests to ascertain whether these differences or relationships are significant, and you can estimate the variance and standard errors of the estimates. In Baby Faces, observations are not independent, which is an assumption of a simple random sample. Children in the same sample program are more likely to share characteristics. Therefore, it is important to make sure you take into account when selecting procedures to use in your analysis. When estimates of the standard error are smaller, chances of finding statistically significant results increase. In other words, the T or F value increases. Taylor series and replication weight methods are ways of estimating the correct variance for complex survey design. In baby faces, we use the Taylor series method. When there are clusters in the sample design, the Taylor series method estimates variance from the variation among clusters. When the design is stratified, the procedure pulls stratum variance estimates to compute the overall variance estimate. You have many options for estimating variance and standard errors using the Taylor series method. Some are listed here. We have included the variables that are required by this method, strat_r and d1_id, which are used in conjunction with the appropriate sampling weight. For baby faces analysis, we used the SAS survey procedures, including proc survey means and proc survey freq, among others. Next, we will talk about types of missing data. Baby faces uses a set of standard codes across all instruments to identify missing data. These codes identify the different types of missing data, those resulting from legitimate skips, item non-response, and instrument non-response. Item non-response occurs when there are missing data on individual items within a given instrument. We have not imputed for item-level missing data in the data we have provided. Version missing occurs when an item was not included in the version of the instrument administered to a particular case. For example, some questions were asked of cohort 1 cases at age 1 in the parent interview in 2009 that were not asked of cohort 0 cases at age 1 in 2010. This example refers to variables starting with P1. Instrument non-response occurs when an entire instrument is missing for a case. Instrument non-response in baby faces data is addressed through the application of the sampling weights. Users should determine how to handle data involving legitimate skips. They should also be certain to revisit the instruments to identify legitimate skips. The approach will depend on the question and the estimate. For example, if interested in estimating the percent of all children in center-based care, users should recode missing data to no center-based care. In contrast, if interested in the percent of children in care who are cared for in a center setting, users should leave missing data as missing. Next, we will talk about how to merge the various data files and how to get the correct samples when working with merged data. Earlier, I described the content of the baby faces data files. As I pointed out, there are two levels of baby faces data, child level and program level. This is different than faces data, which has files at 3 levels, child level, classroom teacher level, and center program level. Due to the way we sampled baby faces programs, it is meaningless to conduct analysis at the classroom or teacher level. As discussed earlier, not all weights, source data, and constructed variables are included in any one file for any particular round of data. This means that in order to conduct certain analyses, users will have to merge data files. To merge data across files, you will need to use identifiers provided on the data files. The child-level data file contains an identification number for each child and an ID number for their early Head Start programs. The same program-level identifier is used on the separate data file for the program-level data. When using the child-level files, if you would like to combine cohorts, simply append. If you would like to combine years of data collection, merge using the child ID. Once you have combined cohort files, you can use the cohort variable to distinguish between cohorts. Cohort is set equal to 1 for the 1-year-old cohort and equal to 0 for the newborn cohort. When combining files, it is important to remember that the 2 different cohorts are at different ages at each round of data collection. So when you append the cohorts together, you will know from a prefix such as P1 that a construct like P1M_employee refers to the mother's employment status at age 1, which comes from the spring 2009 parent interview for cohort 1 and the spring 2010 parent interview for cohort 0. All program-level data is combined into one file. On the child-level constructed variables files, we have included several variables to indicate whether or not a child was eligible in any given year. These are the used for 09 through used for 12 variables and are only included on the child-level constructed variables files. Each variable equals 1 if the child is eligible for that year of data collection. These are particularly useful for running unweighted analyses. For example, if you wish to run an analysis on cohort 1 during spring 2010 data collection, you would want to limit your analysis to the sample where used for 10 equals 1 and cohort equals 1. As a reminder, spring 2010 is the second year of data collection and would correspond to age 2 for the 1-year-old cohort and to age 1 for the newborn cohort. These variables are not on the source level files, therefore you will need to take this into account if you merge source level data across rounds and plan to run an unweighted analysis. In general, the following rules are a good guideline for using Babyface's data. Read the user's guide. Review questionnaires and codebooks. Check for constructed or derived variables. Examine the data quality of variables you are using in your analysis. Run your analysis first with unweighted data. Use the appropriate weights for your research question and the data being used. Check your results for plausibility. Thank you. This ends my portion of the presentation. I'm now going to take some time to answer questions before turning back to Sherry for the conclusion.
Okay, we just have to figure out how to see if there are any questions.
You do not need, there's a question here, do we need replicate weights for the variance estimation, or is the strata and PSU enough? You do not need replicate weights. The strata and PSU are fine. There's also a question for the program level file, is there a child ID on that file to easily merge? There's not a child ID on the program level file because that's at the program level, but there is a program ID on both the program file and on the child level file. So you would merge from the child level file to the program level file using the program ID.
There's a question about technical support, and we'll provide an email address in the last slides to where you can pose questions.
This question about whether or not there is a teacher ID variable in the child level file. We do not include a teacher ID in the child level file since it's not appropriate to run analysis at that level.
There's also a question, and I guess I should have said before, if we don't know the answer to a question and we need to look it up, we'll have to work with Joanna and Linda to send out answers to you. So one question was, what is the range of the number of children served by each classroom teacher? So I don't know the answer to that. I could just off the top of my head tell you that the number of Babyface's children in a particular classroom might be, you know, something small from like 1 or 2 up to say 5 or 6 or more than that. The number of children in the classroom would be larger who are not necessarily Babyface's children. So we can get back to you on that. There's a question about how to link children to their teachers. The teachers are essentially already linked to the children because their data are on the child level files.
That's correct. So we don't have a teacher level file. All of the teacher level information and data is already on the child level file.
There's also a question about reliability, internal consistency, and things like that. And so we do provide psychometric information about the different instruments where we, especially ones where we aren't allowed to provide item level data. And those are, they're definitely in the technical appendices of our various reports. And I'm looking at Judy. Are they also in the data, in the user's guide?
It should be in the user's guide as well.
Can you link children to each other? Oh, you mean for children in the same classroom? Or hold on.
I have to double check whether or not you can tell whether or not the children are in the same classroom for the data. I'll get back to you on that.
I think that, well, okay, so we will get back to you on which children have the, whether you can cluster children under teachers in some way or to see which children have the same teachers. I think that's probably possible, but we'll have to revisit and come back to you.
All right, so there's a question about, since the teacher level data is in the child level file, how would you account for nesting of children within the classroom? The children are not nested within the classroom. The only stratum that we have is at the program level, so it's not appropriate to look at our analysis at the classroom or teacher level. It's only appropriate to look at it at the program level or at the child level.
So if you see our reports, we talk about this or that percentage of children are in classrooms with a given level of quality or a given quality rating.
There's a question that says, will it be clear what program each child is in? Yes, it will be clear which program each child is in. And by ID, not the actual program, but you can tell which children are in the same programs. Same question, right?
There's a question about whether it's possible to figure out if children worked with the same teacher or home visitor for each year, like so to see over time. And I believe that is also, we can do that.
Yeah, simply we can do that as well.
There's a question about whether quality ratings from individual classrooms are aggregated to the program level, and no, they are not, because we didn't sample. What we did is essentially observe wherever the child in our study sample went, we followed them and we observed their classroom or their home visitor. So we may have only gotten a couple of classrooms in a program and it wasn't a sample of the program's classrooms, so we couldn't aggregate it at that level. There's a question about whether there's a measure of child temperament. There are a couple of measures of their social emotional development. We have the BITSI, we have the BPI, and we have the Bailey behavior rating scale that the assessor did after the home visit. And I will have to check, but those are the ones that are coming to mind. So I don't know if you would consider those temperament or not. There's a question about whether there are any indicators of technology use in the family or classroom, such as computer use. So when we get to the micro level of items, I'm going to refer you to the documentation, but I do not recall reporting anything about screen time or computer use or things like that. So I think that we probably do not have that, but you should double check me. Sorry, we're just reading some of these questions that are popping in. There's one question saying if is there a possibility that there are multiple children who come from the same classroom? And since this is a theme, I think we need to give you a more complete answer, but there could be more than one baby faces child in the same classroom whose observation kind of counted for both of them. And the same would go for a home visitor, although the visit would have only been done with one family. If that home visitor had more than one baby faces family, then that rating would have been applied to them. So we'll give you a more complete written down answer for these classroom level questions. Yeah, there's another question about classroom level nesting, and no, we can't. We're just reporting things at a child level and not taking that into account. But we'll put that in our answer that we provide you later. You're welcome. We just were thanked for providing these answers. So, sure, thank you. You're welcome. Well, why don't I move on to the wrapping up, and we can just keep an eye on this question box and see if anything else comes in. And if we end up missing something, we can always add those kinds of responses onto our what we send you afterwards. So I just had a few comments for the wrap up, and in fact I'll go to the last slide because that has some of this information you might want. So we are planning, it's in very early stages, but we're planning additional webinars or other kinds of training opportunities. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'm sure that we'll be working with Research Connections to help do whatever we end up doing around additional trainings. Again, we will kind of take a look more carefully through any questions that we may have missed or haven't answered completely, and we'll send something along afterwards. And if you have any additional questions, you can forward them. I think you could forward them either to this second email address on this slide, the Early Childhood Development Secondary Data Analysis Project Team. That actually essentially will end up coming to Judy and I in the end. But that's a project that we have with OPRE to kind of provide ongoing technical support for projects that are concluded, but people are using the data. Oh, and I think when Joanna was showing the Research Connection site, it looked like the first report that was available was the Age 2 report. There is a more recent report that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and that's a report on children when they were 3. So that I'm sure will end up showing up there too. And so that's our most recent complete report and the final big report on baby faces kids. Yes, the answer, we just had a question about can you email the ECDSCA website with technical questions, and you can. It'll just come to Judy and I.
I'll also just interject here that we at Research Connections are also happy to answer any questions that we can about the baby faces data. Certainly we can answer questions about the data files themselves and reading them into your programs and anything technical like that, or questions about the website. And anything that we get, any sort of content related questions that we get that we feel we can't adequately answer, we will pass it along to Mathematica.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I should have said that. The questions seem to have stopped. I'm not trying to rush anybody. Oh, I must have missed this information. How could I get? Oh, so there's a question about how to access, for anyone who joined late, if you go into the Research Connections site or get in touch with the Research Connections group, they can show you what you need to do to access the data files. It's not just publicly downloadable that you need to fill out an application.
Yeah, folks can contact us at Research Connections, or once this webinar recording is available, you can sort of re-watch the beginning of it where I talked about how folks can access the data. Either way is fine.
I'm not seeing any more questions coming in.
I think I see one question that I can probably answer. Once submitting the application, how soon can I receive the data? Once we receive the application, it's usually just a turnaround time of a handful of days, usually 2 or 3 days, assuming that the application has been filled out appropriately and we're able to approve, which the vast majority of them are. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. We will provide you, once you're approved, with a secure download link. And then you can download the encrypted files and unencrypt them, so you don't need to wait for the postal service to deliver a CD anymore. We do it via secure download. I see another good question here. Can someone apply for the data set to use for educational purposes, such as in a university research methods course? That's a good question, and one that we think about and get asked about regularly. Currently, let me think through this. Currently, the answer to that is unfortunately no, because the entire classroom would have to be on your research team, and that involves collecting lots of information from everybody and having them all sign confidentiality pledges, and so it's sort of shoehorning a class into a project team, which if it's a small class may be fine, and if it's a big class it may not be. So there's also concerns about what systems are you going to be showing the data on, and will they meet the sort of data security requirements. So please definitely contact us. Check out our website for our contact information, or just contact@researchconnections.org. I'd be happy to talk to you more about this possibility, because I know it's a really really popular thing to do and a really useful thing to do, to show data like these in an educational setting, and we don't want to artificially restrict it. So definitely be in touch if you want to talk about it more. Do the data need to be in a locked, restricted room? Well, let me think about this. It depends on the data security plan that you choose. You'll have 3 options to choose from. One is a standalone computer, one is a non-network computer, and the third one is, what is it? A separate hard drive or something. So the data on a hard drive need to be locked in a cabinet. The data on your office computer do need to be stored behind a locked door. I'm 90% sure of this, but I would need to double check the website to be sure. All this information can be found in the application system. So I don't see any more questions for me. Is there anything I'm missing here that is for you folks?
We've been watching it, and I don't think so.
Okay. Well, everybody will get an email. I think, as Linda said in the beginning of the presentation, an email that will include a link to the recording. It will also include a link to the user guide that Sherry and Judy mentioned. And then we will also, I think, put to paper the answers to the questions that we addressed today. And if there are any others that come in, we can do that as well and send that around to all of the attendees. So thank you for joining us. This concludes is there anything else, Judy or Sherry, that you want to say before I close it out?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, great. So we are all set here. Thanks everybody for joining us.